Hello, I believe we're live. Gonna wait before you get started just to make sure this is playing properly. We have audio and all that fun stuff I have a tendency to forget to turn on. I'll just sit here for a minute. Oops. Okay, it looks like we do have audio. Yep, there it is. Okay, so we can get started. Oh, thanks. Joseph, I was not recording. Okay. I think we're good. Sitting here recording. I love that you guys remind me to record. Seriously, I would never remember to hit that button if it weren't for you guys. Okay. There we go. And I think we're good. Okay, so for this one, I am working on a Fredericks. This is one of their Belgian linen canvases, so it's really smooth. If you're doing a lot of small detail, a smoother canvas is going to be the way to go. So anything that's going to give you a nice smooth canvas. I'm going to keep looking outside. Oh, there's chickens on the bird feeder. How cute. I think that's the cardinal. I keep getting cardinals out there. Cardinals and house finches. Okay, sorry. Focus, Lisa. Here we go. So I put up a bird feeder a couple of weeks ago. In this last week, they figured out it's there. And it's like nonstop birds. And it makes me excited. So moving along. Focus. Must focus. So this canvas, you want to go with something that's nice and smooth. Because if you're going to be doing a lot of detail like this, I'm going to be using this is a synthetic hog-haired liner brush. This one's from Hobby Lobby. It's just their generic, their Master's Touch. A number 2. I love their generic brushes. I hate generic art supplies usually. But sometimes brushes, that's the one thing that I tend to really like the generics of. This is really nice. And yes, Joseph, this is zoomed way in because since we're focusing on the eye and the color of the eye, I think you guys should hopefully still be okay. If I have to, I can zoom it out. But, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But yes, it is very pixely for this one, but I think it should, hopefully. We'll see what happens once I start painting. I think we'll be good. So that one, let me see what other brushes. I just grabbed a bunch of them. I don't even know what I'm going to start applying paint with. Yeah, I'm going to start applying with a flat brush. This one is another of the generic Hobby Lobby brushes, but it doesn't say what kind it is. It's kind of like a synthetic, or a tack-on, sort of. And, okay. I'm going to make a few brush strokes, and if this is absolutely terrible, I can zoom it back out, but you're going to see even less then. And I think right now, the main thing I want you to see or to notice are going to be the colors and the values, because that's what really is going to make the biggest difference on this. So let's find out. So let's get some water there. I'm always going to add a little bit of water to the acrylic paint. Now, you'll hear a lot of people say, well, I heard you couldn't add water to acrylic paint. It's not true. You absolutely can. The more water that you add, the less adhesive the paint is, but you would have to add a lot to get to that point. I mean, a lot. And even then, once you varnish it, it's not coming up, at least if you're using a good paint. If you're using a really cheap, like kids quality paint, then yeah, you may end up with problems, but like with Liquitex Basics, not a problem. Okay, so eyeball. Oh, 1 second. I forgot my mouse. I can't zoom in myself on my reference photo. That would have been challenging. Okay, let's see. Okay. So this specific reference photo comes from wildlifereferencephotos.com. If you use this exact one, you need to purchase it from them. But really, with what we're focusing on tonight, just any photo of a tiger really is going to be fine for you if you are going to go ahead and do this. So, yeah, it's still light here. It won't get dark for about at least another 45 minutes or so. It's 8 now. So, and then in about 45 minutes is when I'll stop being distracted by the tree chickens, the cardinal out there, because that's when he goes to bed. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do, I just want to block in my general values, my general lights and my darks. I want to go a little bit darker than what I want my end result to be. The reason for that is that I can put highlights on top and they'll show up really nicely. I like working that way better than the other way around. With acrylics, you're pretty safe. You can work light to dark or dark to light. It's not a huge deal. But for me, I'm going to go a little bit darker than what I plan to go with. So I'm going to mix a little bit of brown. We'll use some this one is my, and it's a little bit washed out, so it's hard to tell, but that is unbleached titanium white I'm mixing in there. I'm not going to jump straight to the white. I won't be using much white at all in this unless I'm mixing it with other things. So I'm just going to use this. I'm going to go ahead and lay this around the eye, and we'll come back to the eye, but I want to get just the values kind of set up, or the general values for some of this. And I'm moving that brush in approximately the right, I'm missing stripes left and right. I've got a lot of stuff to add back in later on, but this is going to give me a decent idea. Just start laying things in. Nothing is going to look good at this stage, and that is totally okay. So we'll just pull a little bit back down here. And basically every single thing here will get covered. Now, you don't have to start by, Donna, I can't put the photo up because it's not my photo to do that with. I can paint from it. I purchased rights to paint it, but I can't share the original photo. You have to go to wildlifereferencephotos.com if you want this specific one. But, I mean, it's a tiger. They look pretty much the same. So you can get away with any reference photo and you're going to have pretty much the same thing. But with... Where was I going with that? I lost my train of thought. Let's see. This is going to be the whitest down here. Just blocking that guy in too. I don't know if I'll work much on this eye tonight, but oops, that part's dark. You don't have to have your canvas pre-painted a dark color like I've done. You could just start from the white. You could tone it. A lot of people would tone with working with a tiger like a brownish red color. That works too. The paint, most of these are opaque enough. It's not that I'm going to mix. It's not a problem to lighten or darken it up. I like starting dark because I can use a white charcoal pencil to draw everything out. You could also use a white transfer paper. Let's say you wanted to trace it and then transfer it on. You could use white transfer paper. For me, this is just the white charcoal pencil, and this is going to erase completely, or the paint will cover it completely. Whereas if I used regular graphite, that I may have problems with. That can definitely show through some of the layers. Let's see. Carrie said, I've heard you talk about how you schedule your work and work schedule. Is there a possibility on a video on that topic at some point? I could, but I've been really bad about not sticking to a schedule myself. Like, since when I had all the health problems this time last year, well, it's been a little more than a year now, my whole schedule just stopped, and I've not gotten back to a set schedule. I've been bad. I definitely kind of take it into, like, I've been much more relaxed than I previously was, that's for sure. Okay, I need a round. I guess I could use the other end of this brush. Let me see if I've got one over here. I just grabbed a handful. I don't even know what all I grabbed. This doesn't even go with acrylic painting. The brush doesn't go there. I don't even know how that ended up in this pile. I don't think I even have a round over here. Huh. Okay then, I will use the round on the other end of this brush, which is in terrible condition. It'll work. Phyllis said, I love the background. Can you quickly talk about how you did that? Thank you. I will. So the background is airbrushed. You're not going to see the whole thing in this video because we're just focusing on the eye. You're going to see in the video how I airbrushed it, but I'm going to, if you're on Patreon, because one of the things patrons, I don't airbrush as much as I would like to because patrons complain about it a lot because if they don't have an airbrush and they wanted to follow that. So what I'm going to do this time for Patreon, and I may eventually do one for YouTube too, is show you guys how you can use a dry brushing and glazing technique to get something similar. It's not as good as airbrushing, or it doesn't give the look that I want as close, but it's close enough that I think a lot of you guys are going to like that. So I'm going to do this week's Patreon video is going to be a two-part. One, the airbrushing that I actually did on the painting, and then I'm going to do like a quick little demonstration because everyone always asks, and I keep promising you guys that I would do that, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. So I'm going to show you how it can be done through dry brushing, which I don't love dry brushing, but with glazing, it's not so bad. So we'll be doing that this week. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow. This is going to be too bright, and his eye's going to look way too flat. I'm going to add some unbleached titanium white. Let's get some of the titanium white in there too. Too bright. You know, I'm going to need a green in there too. You know what? I'm just going to start with that just to get a base. Not worry about the color being perfect. Usually on these base layers, I don't worry about color being perfect. Close really is close enough. I will perfect color and get everything where I want it to be later on. Right now, I just want to block in these shapes. So I'm going to leave that flat. And let's see. I'm trying to decide if there's anything else I really want to block in just yet. I don't think so. I think this is okay for starting. I might pull that a little higher just so I can shade down over it better, which is technically too high. This is not right, but you'll see where I'm going with that when I start shading. So that needs to dry. Answer a couple questions while we wait for that. Actually, why don't I just, while I've got that color out, I can go ahead and block in this eye too. I've got a little too much water on that brush there. Dab that onto a paper towel. Okay, good enough for now. So let me go ahead and get caught up on some questions while we let that set for a minute. Now you can, like when I'm painting on my own, I wouldn't necessarily sit and wait for this to dry. I would either work on another area while it dries, or I would get the hairdryer out and dry it. But right now, we can just let it should dry quickly enough. This will give me a chance to answer a few questions. Let's see. And Donna, you had asked about this photo. You can, even if you just want to look at what it, or see what it looks like, you can go to wildlifereferencephotos.com. This is one of a tiger that's, well, you can't tell because it's zoomed in, but he's in water. So his upper body is in water. So it's a really neat photo. So if you just look at the tigers there, you'll find it. Little Jewel said, my husband just asked if you took 1,000 shot of caffeine. No, actually, I am caffeine free. Well, I had a little caffeine this morning. This is day 1 of no sugar, so there's no sugar in my coffee, so I didn't end up finishing it because, you know, sugar makes everything. Not that I dislike black coffee, but no, that's the only caffeine I've had today. My tea is herbal, so this is just how I talk. People always ask me that, too. Like, no. Sulu's Creation said, I'm so confused about the brushes. Hog hair, synthetic, they don't tell you at art stores what the heck they are. One thing, I don't know, does it say on these? No, it doesn't. 1 second, let me see, because I might have some no, I took them all out of the package. Never mind, that won't help. These ones for Hobby Lobby, they're in the section, it's like oil/acrylic. Those are going to be your synthetic hog hair, usually. There are exceptions. And then you go 1 section over and you get into the Taklon bristle, which is listed as oil, acrylic, watercolor. And then you go over again, you get the watercolor, which is too soft for what I do. I don't buy those brushes. But the ones that are farthest over, the synthetic hog hair, they're just a little bit more stiff. And the Taklon are going to be a little bit more soft. The only brushes that I really want the synthetic hog hair for with acrylics, not that I can't use the other ones, but like my must-have synthetic hog hair for acrylic is the liner brush, the script liner where you've got that nice long point on it. The rest of the brushes that I use are the Taklon, so those are the ones that are usually also listed acrylic or oil, but they're a little bit softer. So you just feel them. You can kind of get an idea for what you want. If it's too soft, it just absorbs too much water and it doesn't really flow nicely. If it's too stiff, it'll create more brush strokes than you want. So you've got to kind of figure out what works best for you and the techniques that you're working with. Carrie Lewis is raising kittens. That's why she's having a hard time with his schedule. Yeah, get the kittens. Luckily, they grow up pretty fast. I don't know if that's lucky or unlucky because they're so cute when they're little. Max said, hi, Lisa. Could you do a video tutorial explaining how to sell prints as you do? Don't do what I do. I don't do a lot of marketing, so I'm not a good example. Like, I have my prints available if somebody wants them, but it's not going to be a very interesting video because you should market them. I'll just tell you that I can give you right now. Like, you can't just upload to Fine Art America like what I've done and then expect prints to just fly off the shelves. You have to tell people you have prints. You have to share that. Some people make prints on their own and send them out on that way. I do the drop shipment thing with Fine Art America because I just don't have time to do my own. But You market them. Don't copy what I'm doing because I don't market. Notice I rarely tell anybody about the prints. I really need to do it more often. It's a lazy factor, not a this is the correct way to do things factor. I feel like a parent, do as I say, not as I do. But you want to market them. You want to tell people you've got prints. Show people the print. One thing you can do too, order a print yourself. Actually, merch-wise, I don't have it in here. It's hanging over there. Merch-wise, that's something you'll see me do a little bit more because I've been playing with the merch shelf that YouTube offers. I just got my own sweatshirt that has a little, like, a quote on the back, which seemed fun. So, I mean, you can show people, like, I ordered a mug that I'm waiting for it to get here so I can, like, show people, here's the Lachri Fine Art mug, which just seemed like fun to me. Plus, I like coffee mugs because... yay, coffee or tea. But you have to let people know. If they don't know, it doesn't even, like, even with me, I mean, people watch my videos, but I don't even tell, if they don't know there's prints, then they're not going to buy prints. So I don't sell a lot of prints, honestly. So, again, back to do as I say, not as I do. Let's see. Have I tried using acrylic inks on canvas? I have not, but Liquitex sent me some. I just haven't tried them yet. Because I think they'll be kind of neat on watercolor canvas. I just haven't tried it. Benjamin said, hi, what is your favorite medium? Probably acrylics, but I wouldn't want to just use acrylics, and I count airbrush with acrylics. I like so many mediums that I would hate to only be able to work with one. But if, like, somebody was like, okay, zombies are coming, you can only bring one art supply with you, and it wasn't a size issue, like any one art supply, that I would go with acrylics. Any tips for getting rid of brush strokes with water-soluble graphite? Practice. Use a slightly softer brush. See, there's so many factors. The paper you're using is going to matter. The brush you're using is going to matter. Practice just that. Like, don't even try to do a full piece. I would practice getting rid of brush strokes or creating brush strokes because sometimes you're going to want those. But really, just painting more with them and getting a feel for them. But try different brushes because one brush could create tons of streaks. You switch brushes and suddenly problem is solved. Paper can make a difference too. Let's see. Just scrolling again, looking at these. Kitty Ring said, how do you keep your acrylics from getting the skin on top when they sit on the palette? They do get it sometimes, and I just puncture them, like kind of open it up. But with this, the Liquitex Basics doesn't dry as fast as the Liquitex Heavy Body. Like when I use heavy body paint, it dries so fast. No matter what I do. Some people will use a stay wet palette where they'll put a, like, it's a type of palette that stays wet. But I don't like what it does to the paint. It makes it feel yucky to me, and I don't like mixing on it, so it's not my choice. With this, it really does stay. Now, part may be that it's a bit humid in Texas, so I guess I'm lucky there. But even in California, where it wasn't humid, I just try not to put out more than you need, but it doesn't, the Liquitex Basics don't dry very fast on me. I use them usually faster than that. Let's see. Have I heard of the Soho Urban Artist Colored Pencil? I have, but I've not tried it yet. So I don't know anything about it. Brett said, I've been hired to teach teenagers acrylic pours. Any tips? Lots of drop cloths. Let's see. Teenagers, messy. Acrylic pour, messy. Drop cloths and gloves. Get them, like, get a big box like on Amazon or something of rubber gloves, disposable gloves, because they're going to need it. They're going to end up with it everywhere. Make sure to stress to them, wear like big t-shirts, that like old t-shirts that they don't care if anything gets on it. And then the drop cloths, just really prepare the areas. Ideally too, if you can get like a shallow box that they can pour in. Some people use like what are they? Those big turkey pans or whatever they're called. I don't cook. I don't know. But those big, like, I remember as a kid, those big metal pans that people cook turkeys in. They're kind of shallow. You could do something like that, but the challenge you're going to have is that the pour is extremely quick. It's over very, very fast, but it's so messy. The mess is going to be the thing to focus, like, try to be prepared for. Anna said, have you ever worked with watercolor markers, pens, etc.? No, I like watercolor pencils, but I've not tried the markers or pens. I've seen some really cool work done with them, though. Notori said, when using acrylics Liquitex, how do you know when it's best to use basics versus soft body versus heavy body? Okay, so for me, the basics tend to be a bit more, I'm going to start layering in some black right now while we chat. The basics tend to be a bit more translucent, and they're thinner. So for me, because of the way that I like to glaze, that's a really good way to go. If I want something like, the main reason I bought my soft body paints, they are way more highly pigmented, so not as good for glazing. They can be done. It can be done. Some are translucent, but they're not as much as what I find with the Liquitex Basics. The Basics are not quite as pigmented. With the, sorry, message on my phone, just, I got distracted again. If it's not chickens outside distracting me, it's my phone. The acrylic pours are what I like the soft body for. That's what I bought it for, because you need a highly pigmented paint, or it works better if you have a highly pigmented paint, I should say, and you want something softer. The heavy body, those are really thick. If you're doing something with, I'm gonna add a little bit of violet in with that. If you're doing something with a, like a palette knife, or you want really thick paint, the heavy body is a good way to go. I don't use it that often because it's too thick, it dries too fast. It's just not ideal for my techniques. So I'll come back to this. I'll come back to questions in a second. Let's go ahead, and I'm using black with a little bit of violet, and I'll end up glazing over this. I'm going to start adding in the direction that these little hairs are going to be. They don't have to be perfect because, like I said before, I'm going to go over this multiple times. And I do want to try to keep my edges clean, but if they're not perfect, like right now, I think I just cut off too much of that eyeball. No big deal. I'll come back over it. So this line here is too thick, but that's because I have to add the little, well, it'd be like a tear line in a person. I'm not sure what you would call that in a tiger. Some little hairs are kind of coming down here. Now with the brush, remember, the harder you push, the thicker your line is. So I will start my brush stroke. If I want like a dagger stroke where it's thick and it gets thinner, I will start by adding a little bit more pressure, and I pull the brush away from the canvas towards the end of the stroke where I want it to thin out. That's a good question from Mitchie Fine Art. How do you decide which lines to keep or not when transferring your image? Either I do too much or too little and get confused. Practice. There have been times where I added every little possible detail and it was too much, and then there have been times where I'm like, I'm missing whole sections. That would be helpful if I would have drawn that before. So I mean, it's just, and everybody's going to be different. What is useful for one person is not necessarily going to be the same for the next artist. The next artist may want more or less. I mean, Wendy Lane's a good example. Wendy Lane, she does colored pencil art, and she doesn't use nearly as many lines as I do usually in her drawings. I've seen her do stuff and I'm like, you've hardly drawn anything, and it comes out, you know, photorealistic. So every artist is going to be a little bit different. I feel like I put a lot of lines, but then I've seen where some students preferred even more. You've got to figure out what you're comfortable with, because what's helpful to me may not be helpful to you. I'm just rounding that off. I may as well just fill that in more solid. I'm going to shade over all of this, so it doesn't really matter. I'm not even going to worry about getting rid of brush strokes or anything right now. I just want to try to start forming that shape a little bit better. I'm trying this new, and I haven't decided if I like it or not. This paint, I'll show you guys. Paint, what is it called? Paint Puck. This company makes things for rinsing your brushes out. They sent them to me to test out, to potentially do a video. I'll make a video if I end up liking them. This cup thing's kind of neat. We'll try it for a bit and see how much I like it. It's different. It's very different than what I'm used to. I haven't decided. There are things that I'm liking about it. So I keep being really slow when I clean my brushes because it's so different than what I'm used to. Anyway, this doesn't matter to you guys. You don't care yet because I don't even know if I like it yet or not. Let's see. If you guys have not already, make sure to check out the moderators' channels. The moderators, it sounds like not like they're people. Valerie and Joseph both have channels here on YouTube, art channels that are great. Make sure to check them out and say thank you to them for helping. They help me so much. Like, not even just here, just moderating the art group, and like Joseph does our group challenges. Everybody helps so much. So thank you guys, and make sure to check out their channels. It's linked in the video description. Lourdes said, how would you suggest to get started in taking commissions? I figured I should specify exactly what kinds of art I'm willing to do, but beyond that, any tips for finding clients? First, have a good portfolio, good examples of what you can do. Like, let's say you want to do commissions doing pet portraits. I don't recommend, let me see, hold on. Let me decide if I want to start, I'm going to start putting in some of the stripes, which I'm going to first, I don't want to go too dark. I'm actually going to mix some blue in with this. Sorry, thinking out loud as I come up with where my tiger stripes are going to go. You want to make sure that you've got a good example of what you can do, because one of the mistakes that a lot of people make when they start taking commissions is they've done like 1 or 2 portraits and they're good, but their reference photo was amazing and that artist either hasn't yet learned what photos they can and can't work from, or they don't have like enough like consistency. I've told this story before. There was an artist on an art group I was in back when forums were a thing. And she did this one portrait of somebody's dog who was, I mean, this painting was amazing. This girl was so skilled. And my friend hired her to do a portrait of her dogs. Well, that artist didn't know that she was not able to work from any photo. And so she accepted a really bad photo that I never would have accepted. I ended up talking to the friend after. I'm like, yeah, that photo was terrible. No wonder she couldn't do what she did for the other art person. But the problem, like there was this whole miscommunication thing. And part of it was that artist the artist should have known I can't work from that. And she should have told the client, because the client ended up furious that she spent money on something that didn't look like the artist's other work that she had seen. So you want to make sure you've got a lot of work. You've got, you know what you can do. You need to be comfortable telling someone no too, because sometimes a client or their project is not a fit for the way you work. It's easy to go, you know, I can work in any style. Okay, show examples of that, because your idea of that style may not be the same as their idea of that style. You know, just make sure you've got stuff that they can see so they know who they're buying from. I think that's a big deal. Tips for finding clients. I got a lot through Facebook, and believe it or not, even eBay. I would post photos of, you know, have artwork on eBay, and people would look me up and then contact me to paint their dogs or whatever. That way, I got some work that way, but mostly Facebook. Back when forums were a thing, I got some work from forums, but that's not going to be the most effective way to find clients anymore. I'm going to go back to the days of forums. People seem to be a little bit more accountable to the way they treated everyone versus normal social media that we have today. When will the next live stream be where I do critiques? I don't know. I have no idea. What brand of paint am I using? I am using Liquitex Basic. I should have the list of all the supplies I'm using in the video description. Hold on. Let me make sure none of these texts are anything I need to take care of. One is my husband. Okay. Talking about video games. That is not important. So what I'm doing right now, this is kind of a blue. I've mixed black in with it. I'm creating just the idea of where some of these stripes are going to be. I'm going to put black on top of it later, but right now, and the blue that I'm using is, what is this one? This one is cobalt blue. How does Salvador Dali start his mornings? With a bowl of cereal. Wow. Kitty Cat, let's see. Do you think that since I don't like, and I'm really bad at, painting, that I could push possible clients away? Do people specifically look for paint often? Well, let people know what you do. First off, if you're not painting because if you're not interested in it, that's one thing. If you're not painting or you're choosing not to paint because you don't know how, learn how. That's something you can definitely learn how. I think the more that an artist can do, the more mediums you can work in, the more of everything, the better you are, because you are going to be more attractive. You're able to fit the needs of more clients. So I always think that that's a good thing. You don't have to. There are plenty of artists who only work in like colored pencils, and they're phenomenal, and that there's nothing wrong with that. Like if that's what your interest is, you want to stick with what you're interested in. I don't think you should force something you don't care about. But if it's something that you're just like, I'm bad at painting, so I'm not going to try, I would say learn to paint. The more you can do, the more attractive you are going to be to potential clients, because you can, like I said, you can fit more needs. You can do more. Getting work as an artist can be a challenge all on its own, so you don't want to limit yourself if you don't have to. But that said, there are so many artists who work just in colored pencil, just in oil paint, just in watercolor, just in any thing you can think of, and that's fine. They still are making a living just that way. So it's not a must, but I do think it's a good idea to know how to do more. But if it's not something you like, I wouldn't worry about it. You'll find people who will buy whatever. It's just a matter of finding the right buyers for what you do. Need to make a grayish color here. We'll get some violet. That is going to be way too dark and have way too much money. Water. Let me add some water to that. Let's see, or white to that. Baby Pandas wants to know what glazing is. Glazing is essentially, it's like tinting the color. With acrylics, I thin it with water, but you could also thin it with glazing medium, and it makes it translucent. So let's say I painted, actually a good example, well, you can't see the background. Let's say I painted the whole tiger just in black and white. I can then glaze, use transparent oranges and browns on top of it to add the color. So it's like tinting the color. And when you glaze, each layer, you get, because it's translucent, you want to use translucent colors ideally for that. The light refracts through each layer in a way that creates a lot more depth than just straight out color, like paint by number style. Sarah Makes Art said, I was thinking about the time when you told someone not to worry about their accent when doing their videos. Well, some of the biggest art channels run by people with non-American accents. That is true. There we go. Vladimir said, have you ever tried the Fabriana cold press? I have not. I wouldn't use it for colored pencil, but I suspect like cold press paper is really good if you're like watercolor pencils, Inktense it would work well with. You can use it for a lot of other things. Not colored pencil would not be my first choice though. It's a bit too rough. This is a nice lavender color I got with the violet. There's a little bit of blue in there and some black. Just adding some little details. Let's see. Kristen said, in Trinidad, it is very hard to sell or make money on fine art pieces. I have had multiple pieces up for sale at $200 to $250 for my art, and all the materials are expensive. Any tips? I don't know. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Trinidad, so I don't know how that's going to be. But I mean, marketing in general is usually going to be about the same everywhere. And a lot of it is just finding the right buyers, finding people who are interested in what you're doing. And luckily, because of the internet, which clearly have, because you're here with us tonight, I mean, the internet may be a good choice for you as selling online. I know, I mean, I have friends. I have a friend in Wales, Jason Morgan. He sends work over to the U.S. all the time. He sells there. He paints there, and he will paint his stuff, like where I'm working on a stretch canvas on stretcher bars. I can't send this internationally. It's too big. Shipping will cost an arm and a leg within the States. Outside of the States, it gets crazy. So what he does is he just paints it on a loose canvas and can ship it in a tube, rolled, and he's able to sell his work all around the world that way. I mean, we live in one of the best times, I think, to be an artist, because, I mean, we aren't limited to where we live. When I first moved to Texas, I mixed a little bit of burnt sienna in with that yellow. Just get a solid color in here. But when I first moved to Texas, I was like, I used to do just marine life. And I'm like, well, that's not going to be a fit here. Yeah, but I can sell on the internet, so that doesn't even matter. You can still paint any style you want. You can paint anything and just sell internationally. Just think about how you're going to package that. You may be limiting yourself a bit in doing that by, you know, like what Jason does. He paints on the loose canvas so that he can ship it easily, which is a great idea. Just keep that in mind with the size that you're working on. Is it going to be something that you can ship? Now, I don't really want to smooth this out completely. Like if there are a few brush strokes showing, that's just adding detail. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to rinse that brush off, and I'm going to pull some of this violet with a bit of brown, mix those two together. Maybe a little bit of black in there too, which is mixed in. I don't know if you can see that, but there was black in my violet, so I just pulled some of that in there too. I'm going to start layering in the shadows. Actually, I'm going to need a brush to blend this with. So I've got two brushes I'm going to use. I'm going to apply it with one, and I've got a clean, it's stained red, but it's actually clean. It's a stiff round brush, just a cheapy little brush, and I'm going to start layering in where the shadows are going to go. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect, and I am blending wet into wet at this point. So this is not a glaze. This is just blending in with the yellow that was there. Just let that kind of smudge in. I'm going to get a bit of that shadow over on this side as well. I'm just going to dab that just a bit to smudge that. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to start blocking in a little bit while that dries, and I'll answer some questions while I start blocking in some of the fur, the orange fur around his eye too. Not that that has to be done at this stage, but you know, we're chatting anyway, may as well. Gloria, I don't think you missed too much. I'm just blocking in color so far. Oops, that just scrolled way too far. Oh my gosh. Why do you do this to me, YouTube? Don said, have tips for drawing a person with a beach background in acrylic. You've got to get more specific. I mean, that's like going to somebody and going, how do you oil paint? Like, it's too broad. If you had a specific question about doing that, I think I could give you good tips. The only tip I can think of is if I were to do that, I'd paint the whole beach scene first, then draw the person on and paint the person separate. I wouldn't paint around the person, but that's just how I work with acrylics. But yeah, you'll have to be a little bit more specific for me to give you anything of value there. Blake said, I've been working in graphite for 7 years and started with color pencil recently. Would it be too much to try to learn paint at the same time? I've had students that'll learn like 5 things at the same time, just based on what they're interested in working on that week. I'm not going to say that's the right choice for everybody, but you know, you've got to figure out what works for you, what interests you. Some people get bored if they try to work just in one at a time, whereas some people do great with it. I mean, or do better if they only work with one at a time. I need a little bit of violet in there. So this is my burnt sienna. I've got a little bit of the violet, and there's some yellow. That one is Naples yellow. I've also got a little bit of unbleached titanium white. Got all kinds of colors in here. I'm just kind of mixing till I get about the color I want. This is going to take several layers, so it's not a huge deal what color this comes out as. This is too pastel right now. I'll glaze over it. Dixie Art said, how do you draw on the pouring medium with your white charcoal? I don't. It is too slick. I use white transfer paper. I get a better, white or the black transfer paper by Low Cornell. Seems to stick the best for me, but it's also not perfect. Like it's a challenge. Oh, that is a terrible color. That is way too peach. Let's move again with some of these. I need more yellow. When you put it on top of the dark color, it doesn't look the same as it looks on your palette all the time. And it's too dry. Yeah, that'll work. Just to start laying this in. But yeah, the Low Cornell transfer paper works the best for me. I draw everything out on a piece of tracing paper and then transfer that image with that paper over. But the white charcoal pencil just does not stick for me at all. I'm going to have to actually paint in the fur on top of this later. You know, the actual like clumps of fur. Right now, I'm just getting a general idea for where what colors are going to go where. Like, this is kind of a mess right now. Like a big mess. But I like to, when I'm painting, because you can get overwhelmed if you've got a lot of detail like this. What I like to do, just pick a little area and work on that. Don't try to work on the whole body. Like when I used to paint a tiger, I would take the whole body, paint everything orange, and I would kind of, now all the black stripes, and I would do it all together. And I find it just, you end up with way better results if you slow down and work on one little section at a time. Let's see. Donna said, any chance of a tutorial on just dog and cat eyes? I'm currently struggling with very dark brown eyes, so any tips would be appreciated. What order do you paint your eye colors? It depends on what I'm doing. I mean, even here, I do it different every single time. It doesn't, I mean, there are like 20 different ways to get to the same end. So, ooh, that is a lot of paint on that brush. So it's not the same, but actually that wouldn't be a bad idea. I think I do like the idea of that video because I think there are things that I can show you, but use the eyedropper tool to get an idea of the colors, because more often than not, a lot of those colors are going to be so much darker than you think. I mean, almost black. And a lot of people, when they're drawing the eyes, they try to like, knowing the dog has brown eyes, so they'll try to force it to be brown. Or they'll do that with people portraits too. Like, okay, this person, I know she has blue eyes, so I'm going to paint them blue, when in fact they're like a dark gray or almost black in depending on how the light is hitting it. So I think it's important to use that eyedropper tool and get an idea of what color you're really looking for, because so often it's not what you think it is. But yeah, I think that's a good idea for a tutorial. I like it. Lumen said, your color pencil paintings are actually my favorite out of all of them. Thank you. Starving Artist Collective said, ever tried Altair interactive acrylics? I wonder if that's, I have some kind of interactive acrylics in my drawer here that someone gave me. It may have been those. I don't remember if they were those or I think Grumbacher. I forget which, but I have not tried them yet. I need to. I think she gave me a blue, a black, and a white, which is plenty to do a painting with. I just haven't done it yet. I can't imagine me liking them. I could be wrong because I say that about things all the time. But I have a hard time imagining that working well for me the way I like to layer. But I'm curious to try them and see what I think, because maybe what I'm thinking they do isn't what they actually do. That's entirely possible. I'm amazed at how often I've been wrong about things I'm going to like, medium-wise lately. Watercolor pencils come to mind. And those are now one of my favorites. So, and see how I'm just starting to build up what direction the fur goes? And these are actually too long right now. A lot of these brush strokes, it's making him look like his fur is too long. So I'll break some up by making them shorter. Plus, when I glaze over it, it's going to tone a lot of that down. Can you use acrylic paint as an airbrush paint? I have used that before. You have to make sure it's thinned way out, and depending on the needle size of your airbrush and how much pressure your compressor has, it can clog really fast, really easily. If you do mix it, you want to mix it to about the consistency of milk, but it's still, I definitely prefer airbrush paint, but there have been times where I needed a certain color, the colors in airbrush paint I had left, or I was running out. I've ran out of white, I don't know how many times, so I've used my white I made my own. It wasn't as good, but you can do it. Wouldn't be my first choice. Oh, that just scrolled too far. Come on, there we go. Wait, nope. Have I been doing any commissions lately? No, I'm not currently taking commissions. Just there's no time to do that and videos. So, I mean, because when you take a commission, there's a lot of pressure in that with going back and forth, you know, making sure everything is exactly what the client is looking for. So it's too time consuming to do that and try to get videos, because for a while I was still taking commissions while doing the videos, but I couldn't, it made it really hard to get the video out on time if the client was like, well, I need this changed, I want that changed, or just going through the beginning stuff of what they want, like the breaking that down, versus me just being like, okay, I'm gonna paint a tiger today, go find any picture I want, I can make changes I want, I can do whatever I want. So it made it really hard for me to be able to do the videos and those. So I am not currently taking commissions. So no, I'm not working on any, just because I'm not taking any. Thu Art Illustration said, just wanted to jump in here and say, hey, been pretty busy as of late. Thanks for sharing. Hi, Thu. Kitty Cat said, do you have any pets and do you want any more? I want all the pets. I'm trying to convince flamingos to come live with me. I have 2 Italian Greyhounds, 3 hermit crabs, 2 are Ecuador, 1 is a Caribbean or purple pincher. I've got a cockatiel named Chicken, and my husband has a parrotlet named Nugget. And eventually, I only want 2 dogs at a time. My dogs are really old, so when they're no longer with us, which is so sad, I would rather them just live forever. But when that comes, I do want to get an Iberian Hound and a Rhodesian Ridgeback. Those are my 2, or a Saluki. I really like Salukis too. So I'm going back and forth between a Saluki and an Iberian Hound for that one. But yeah, I love animals, but I need to make sure, because I'm tired a lot, so I need to make sure that I don't get so many I can't take care of them. So, like, my current like obsession right now is feeding wild birds, because I get to feed them, but I don't have to really take care of them. That's working out really well for me, and plants. Funny, Joseph and Valerie both answered that. I just saw now. You guys know my pets better than I did. I had to stop and think about it for a minute. Barbara said, what brushes do you like to use when using watercolor pencils? I used mostly my Taklon bristled brushes. I actually didn't like the watercolor brushes that much because they were too soft for the watercolor pencil to dissolve as much as I wanted, which was odd. I thought watercolor pencils would work, or I mean watercolor brushes would be ideal for the watercolor pencils, and I liked a slightly more stiff brush, one that I use for acrylics actually, the Taklon bristled. So those are definitely my favorites there. I'm going to just dab in here, and I'm twisting and turning the brush because this fur here is so short. So I just want little dots. And this is why the color that I chose as my background is kind of perfect, because I need that color to be the little color in between these little dots, these little sections. I'm just kind of twisting and turning that brush so that I don't have too much uniform. You want things to be, you want good variation when you're doing anything with nature. This actually comes up farther, I think. I think this actually just dots all the way down there. I'll do a lot of glazing later, but that's good. Vladimir said, any tips or suggestions when using any type of water-soluble graphite pencil? I'm using Art Graph 2B and 6B for sketching currently. Any tips or suggestions? I need you to be more specific. Like, whenever I get the open-ended question like that, I'm like, I don't even know where to start. I need a more specific question. Let me see if I can think of anything. Don't push hard with them. Keep a light hand. There, I came up with something. Keep a light hand. If you need something to have more water, you can mix it on, like, draw on another piece of paper, add water. Like, let's say you need it to be lighter than what you have because a 2B is still pretty dark. You can mix water with it on another brush and then paint that lighter value onto your project. So there, 2 tips. Sarah Makes Art says, Roberto Blake has advised holding off on monetization until 10,000 subscribers. What do you think about this? I don't think it's a bad idea. 10,000 may be a bit much. I may not wait that long. I'd probably do it sooner than that, but I can also understand why that suggestion would be made, because you're not making a ton, depending on, see, and I think it depends more on, too, than, it's not just about subscribers, it's also about how many views the YouTuber is getting. I mean, if you're getting tons of views, there are people with channels that have less subscribers than me but get, 8 times more views based on the content, that more people are more likely to watch all of their content. So just the nature of different types of YouTube videos. So in that case, it makes way more sense to monetize sooner. So there would definitely be a lot of factors in there. I can see why that suggestion would be made and where that would be beneficial, but I wouldn't use that as like a hands down definite rule. I've not seen the video, so I don't know. He gives good advice though, so I'd be interested to watch it. He actually gives a lot of good advice. Kitty Cat said, a lot of brands seem to be American and aren't at my local store. You probably have something comparable, whatever it is that I mean, obviously, a lot of the brands I use are going to be from here. Well, not necessarily. I guess a lot of them are from the UK, too, that I use. But you can try and see if you've got anything local that would work in a similar way. You don't have to use the exact tools that I am. These are just the ones that I found work for me. Thanks, Circes. Don said, it's a person's face edited on the beach scene, and you answered a question as to what to paint first. Well, good. I'm glad I could help. Carrie Lewis said, and one of the things when I paint people, what I'll often do, like let's say I did the beach scene for the background, draw out the person, don't draw all the detail. I will draw the person out and then just paint it like brown, just one solid color, or a light brown, or this color, burnt sienna would be a good color. But get an opaque color first. So I would mix that with bleached titanium white in order to cover up the blue background. Cover that, then draw the details of the person. In that case, if I'm drawing the details on top of a light color, I would use probably a water-soluble graphite pencil so that it'll show up. Unless my color is dark enough that I can use a white charcoal, that would be my first choice. And then I will go through and paint. But I'll usually get a solid color just so I'm not fighting the waves and stuff in the background. Carrie said, I would love to see another tutorial on landscapes and colored pencil, perhaps a traditional colored pencil over a watercolor pencil. It's a good idea. I haven't done any, I've not done just a gosh, I think I only did one video of a landscape with colored pencil. That is a good idea. You guys have lots of good ideas. I need to take notes. I love when you have suggestions because sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'm like, I can't think of anything right now to paint. So I really do need to write these down. Oops, and I knew that was going to scroll too far. Dang it. Do you have any plans for more watercolor tutorials? In the watercolor pencils, absolutely. I may end up doing watercolors too, but for watercolor pencils, definitely. I loved those. So I actually, my next one with those, I want to do one where I compare, like do the same project with the Derwent and the Caran d'Ache watercolors so you can really kind of see the difference in those two. I thought that would be fun. Let's see. Carolyn said, what do you know about underbinding? The idea of underbinding has been freaking me out. I know that people make videos to scare people and then turn off comments so people can't be like, that's not totally true. The video that you're probably seeing is one that has caused, I guess, headaches for quite a few YouTubers because we all have like people coming and asking us now. Somebody had made a video, and I don't want to say, like, I don't think she was like lying or anything if it's the same video I'm thinking of. She's just had a lot of misinformation, I think, where things were, it was partial information. Like, yes, the more water you add, the less adhesive the paint is. It doesn't flake. It doesn't chip. If you're using a quality paint, Liquitex Basics, not going to chip or flake. What can happen though, let's say I have an area where I mixed a ton of water. I could take my finger, like see how well, you can't see it there. I can take my finger here and see how nothing comes up. Nothing's going to scrape because that's really on there. That is with water too, by the way. I always add water to everything that I add. It's never just straight paint out of the tube, but it's not that much water. Now, let's say I thin that out a ton with water. If I did that, you might leave a scuff there. But when I varnish this and I do that, nothing's coming up. Nothing's going to hurt it. There will be no damage to it. So once it's varnished, all of that information, it doesn't really matter. Now, there may be some cheap paint that could cause problems with that didn't work well. Liquitex Basics, never been a problem. Soft body, heavy body, never been a problem. So that can have something to do with it. The canvas that you're using can cause problems if it's doesn't have a good gesso, like a cheap gesso. I've seen that flake, but not from using water like that. It's one of those things where some of it, yeah, it's partially true, but it's not the whole story. So it doesn't, because you're not getting the whole story. It's like, when you know the whole story, none of it really applies. Like, it doesn't matter to me because it doesn't affect me because it doesn't happen because I'm going to varnish, because I'm going to add other layers on top. There have been times where I thinned out so much and still never been a problem. And I've painted like that on furniture that I used to use as a step stool. I stood on it all the time because it was right next to my saltwater tank. Also, salt water was always on it, still never damaged it. Once it's varnished, it's fine. So it's really not a problem. But it's a good question, and it's one that I mean, we get a lot because so many people will watch videos that only, and it's bad because it's like the video that I'm thinking of it was well done. It was just like only telling part of the story, so it sounded way scarier than it should have, I think. Okay, Carrie Lou said, don't worry about notes. You guys will remind me. When in doubt, Inktense. I love Inktense. I want to try Inktense. I did that Brusho watercolor stuff with the Smart Art Box recently. I really want, and one of you guys suggested it, I want to use that for the background, like that splattery effect, and then do something super detailed with Inktense on top. I'm really excited to do something like that. Like, those were actually fun. And then freaking Valerie had to link me to Amazon where bigger sets that she has are, so I kind of want to buy more. I haven't yet, but I want to. Those were fun. And I want to start doing art journal, or like sketchbooks more. So I thought those mediums would be really fun in that too. Okay, I'm going to start going. That laid down enough. I'm going to start coming back through with the black. See how, I mean, this is super messy. It doesn't need to be good yet. Like, your basic block layers are just not a big deal. What kind of varnish do I use? I use for acrylics, I first use a spray varnish that's like a matte varnish. I think it's by Krylon. And then I've got a video on it. And then once that dries completely, I put a gloss varnish by Liquitex over that. I find that even when I've not thinned with water, just the nature of the Liquitex, too many times I put their gloss varnish over and it's smudged. Like it almost reactivated such minor amounts, but I had it happen on something where it was white and it smudged. So now, and especially if I've airbrushed paint has a tendency to kind of lift anyway. So if I do a spray varnish and then a gloss brush varnish over, that works really well for me. What do I think? Donna says, what do I think of using soft gel gloss medium over an animal eye before doing the highlight so it sort of floats on the top? I think, you know, it works and it looks beautiful. When you start layering and when you use a gloss varnish, or not a varnish, I use a glazing medium. It's the same thing. It makes it thicker, which it affects how the light refracts through each of those layers. So the thicker you can make that, and that is one huge benefit of using glazing medium, and you will get even more of a glow because of the way the light bounces, like the way it makes that layer thicker. And no, it's stunning that way. It really does look good. If I thought of using a workable fixative to watercolor that is scrolling too fast. I just missed it. Kelly said, I thought about using a workable fixative to watercolor once complete and then a light flat spray UV varnish to help with light fast thoughts. I don't know about the workable fixative. Watercolor, I'm not super, that's not been my thing that I'm an expert on by any sense of the stretch of the imagination. So I don't know about that, but the UV varnish does help with light fast. That is a good idea. I do it on Inktense. I still don't feel comfortable selling it, but I'm still going to spray it on the Inktense, anything I'm going to display. So I do think that those sprays are a good idea, and then UV glass on top of that. Okay, I'll come back to questions in a second. Let's go ahead and come back to this guy. This is the wrong end of that brush. Actually, let's just switch to the liner. This is that number 2 synthetic hog hair. Gives me a bit more control. Now see right now how it looks like he's really staring at you, like he's terrified and has a super flat eye. Watch this one thing that is going to make all the difference. I'm going to take a little bit of black. I'm going to put it on the top here. And ivory black actually works good for this. I'm using Mars black, but ivory black works. I'm just going to smudge that out just a bit. This only works. You want to make sure that first layer is dry. And what I'm doing, this is the shadow. The upper eyelid is casting a shadow here. And so that's what I'm catching right there is that shadow. And this gives you a lot more dimension. That black pulled down a little too far, so I'm going to add a bit of water. We'll pull that up. This eye would need it too. This eye needs a lot of work. I should probably not even mess with it. That guy, I've got so much to do on that side. So we're going to let that set for a second. I'm going to do a little bit more detailing just with black for a minute. And let's see. So I've got to start shaping. The eye is not drawn out right. I think that actually is coming out too far. That should line, I think I pulled the black down too far. And I'll have to pull a lot more violet in here. This is definitely too dark. Oh yeah, this only comes down to like here. Go back up. I'm just going to build and build and build until it starts to look more realistic. And the eye is still going to look a bit flat until I put that last highlight on. The highlight is going to make all the difference. Oops, too much. So I'm going to come down on the edge here. Got a little bit of black right along there. Still watching the direction that the fur is going to go, where that overlaps. Tasha said, do you have any advice for reusing a canvas that may have been less successful to hide traces of the original? Is gesso required again? You don't have to. I've seen, I mean, gesso helps if you've got a lot of ridges. It depends. I've repainted canvases before. If there's a lot of bumps and ridges, like you used really heavy brush strokes or thick paint, you can take a bit of sand, a light sandpaper, and sand that down. You're going to end up with a really smooth canvas, which can be great depending on what you're trying to do. But you've got to watch that, because sometimes those ridges will show through. For me, I found I cover it to an extent, like whether it be with gesso or with white paint. Gesso is, I think, a little bit more effective. But some of the background for me, I went ahead and let that texture show a little bit, and it just looked cool in the end painting, because somebody who didn't know that previous painting was there wouldn't know. It almost looked like extra detail. It gave it this, I don't know, just a really cool, like when I say texture, I don't mean one that you could touch. It was a visual texture that was just, I liked it. But yeah, if you lightly sand it, don't sand it too much, because it could actually get to the point where it was almost too smooth and you can have a hard time getting your paint to stick real well to it. But yeah, you can. I mean, I've done that, but I don't mind when the background, the first ugly painting that I didn't like or that I started and didn't want to finish, that's usually what I've done, is that I started it and then was like, I'm not finishing this. This is terrible. I don't like the idea anymore. That worked out really well for me. Oops, and of course scrolled too far. Tana said, my problem is I want to buy everything. I need to be rich. I am right there with you. Like, I want to own all the art supplies. Mitchie said, or Mitchie, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, said, my 5-year-old son informed me that a spider is actually a land octopus. Reminded me of your chickens. That is funny. I actually found a spider over by one of my orchids the other day, and it looked like, when I looked really close at him, you could tell it was one that was going to jump. Like, I just knew this guy was going to jump at me. But when I looked closely, he was like a light, he was actually unbleached titanium white was what color he was. He had black feet. It looked like he was wearing boots. So I made my husband, normally I'd be like, come kill it. But I made him come catch it and set it free, because it was a spider wearing boots. You cannot kill a spider wearing boots. That's just wrong. He needed a top hat to go with it. Brent said, the brush show paint was super fun, even when it didn't come out the way I wanted to. It still looked neat. Exactly. Like, that stuff you couldn't be super, it's kind of like acrylic pours. You can't be super, like worried about it coming out perfect, because it's probably not going to. It just was like fun to let it do its thing. There was one of them that I did that I didn't share. It was like, it was a real hot mess, but it was still fun to do. The video was so long, I cut that one out. Donna said, by the way, thank you for answering so many questions and sharing your knowledge with me and everyone else. It's very cool of you. Well, thanks for joining. It's fun. I have a blast hanging out with you guys. Whoops. I'm dropping, hold on, the light of my easel. There we go. So this one is blue. I've added a tiny bit of white so that it's a little bit more opaque, but it's the cobalt blue and black. Starting to get some of these highlights. And I'm going to do the same thing for these areas here, the black stripes. And I will come back through and put black in it, but I'm just going to start with this sort of medium color. That way when I put the black, I've already got my highlights. Kitty Cat said, I draw in my bedroom, which is literally just for a single bed in length and around the size of one in width, so I don't have a lot of storage space to draw with. Hundreds of stuff on. Oh, I understand that more than you can know. Like, where I lived before, my bedroom, my living room, my art studio, it was all one room that was not very big. And I've since been back to that room, and it was like, wow, this is even smaller than I thought it was. You get really creative with storage when your space is that limited. Like, you start getting to where one thing has to work for multiple purposes. Storage boxes are really handy. I love, even now, I mean, this room is not as big as I would like it to be. It's not super small, but it's not huge. I would definitely like more space. But wood crates, I painted them to make them pretty, but just having something to put stuff in that I can easily pull out, that helped a lot. I also really like, I don't know if you've got room for that in yours, but a dresser I got from IKEA. And that was really nice for storing a lot of stuff. And it's so heavy duty. Like, I used to get those plastic ones, those cheapy plastic, like they had the drawers that would pull out. But when you get all the art supplies in it, it would get too heavy. And so the drawer wouldn't want to pull all the way. An actual wood dresser is so nice because it can handle the weight of all the art supplies. Ercy said, would you do art of an animal body in 2 different mediums using watercolor pencil and Inktense? I could, but I don't know if I would, just because I'm too lazy to switch back and forth. Like, I'm not sure what the benefit would be. But it absolutely can be done. Gail said, I just discovered that I bought varnish that must be for oil paintings, I think. It's Gambar by Gamblin. Am I in trouble putting it over my acrylics? No, that one actually can go over acrylics, too. That's a really good varnish. So you are safe. I love that varnish. I know, I'm actually almost tempted. I'm like, should I just start using that for acrylic? And then I only have to buy one because I really do like that varnish. Okay. So obviously these blue stripes on here, they're way too blue. But they will work for now. One of the things I love with painting, acrylics or oils, but acrylics because the dry time is so fast, is that if you have a, like, it's not as stressful, I don't think, for the color. Like with colored pencil, you have to be a bit more exact as you work. It's not as forgiving. But with painting, like, I can mess stuff up so bad and it will be totally okay. Like my stripes in here, I lost my place completely. I'm not even gonna worry about them right now, but it doesn't matter. Like I'm gonna be able to draw them back in later on. I just have to take a bit of time to actually do that. I'm gonna put a little bit of blue right along here and smudge it into the yellow because I need a greenish tint anyway. Ooh, that worked really well. Put a little bit over here too. Just gonna dot a little bit and smudge it. And I need black to go under that eye. So one of the reasons that I like the synthetic hog hair liner is that it holds its shape better. I used to just use the Taklon bristle. Those were my favorite for years with acrylic painting. But this one holds its shape so much better than those do for the fine details. When you're painting, dots are a big deal for everything. I'm going to mix a grayish color, add some white, some black, some blue. But dots, they seem like so simple, but that really works so well for a lot of different techniques. I'm just going to twist that. So I'm just going to kind of dot a few things back and forth. Little jagged line. Little highlight there. Ercy said, what about, what doing art about of an animal? Oh, wait, we answered that one. That's weird. Vladimir said, what do you think of when artists use flesh tone paint? Is it better than making your own flesh tone? Or better and easier way to make flesh tone? I'm thinking about, I should buy it. I have it here, actually, and I do use it sometimes, but it's never like, no one's skin color is that exact color. Everybody's a different skin tone, and then you put that same person in a different lighting situation, and now that skin tone has to be totally different. So it's not like a one fits all. If you were drawing cartoons, it'd be fine, but I like it in addition to other colors, but I would never use it alone. But I do own the one, Winsor Newton makes one that I have that I actually really like. I have a lot of colored pencils in that too that I do use in skin, but never just that. There's always, because everybody's skin tone is going to be slightly different. Every lighting situation is going to be slightly different. So you would never have just one, but it isn't a bad color. I do use it a lot. Junk Drawings said, is painting on a black background different from white? Does it the color differ? A little bit, yeah. Because all of these colors, especially in this case, maybe not all of them, but most of the colors that I use are semi-translucent. So some of that black is going to show through. If I worked these same colors on top of white, they'd be brighter, which in my case is not what I want. So this just makes it easier for me. But yeah, it does give you a different look. Okay, so this is the straight black again. And I'm going to do a few little dots right under here. Got too much water on that brush. When you use a liner brush, you're going to use a bit of water and just twist that into the paint. You don't want a chunk of paint. If there's a chunk on the tip of your brush, you're using it wrong. It's not going to work right for you. Okay, I'm going to start getting my contrast up a bit while the eye dries before we put the highlight on that. I think I need a new cup. That one's leaking from the top every time I tilt it. I've definitely gotten my use out of it. Do I want to use that brush? Seeing if I have anything else over here that might be helpful. Yeah, this one will work okay. This one is a filbert. I think it's a filbert. Either that or it's a damaged flat. That looks like a filbert. Simply Simmons, yeah, filbert, number 6. And I just want to start getting some of these areas a bit brighter. Mine are super dull. Now this brush is a little bit frayed, so it's almost working like a rake brush, just because it's damaged. So if you have a brush that you damage, don't throw it out, because sometimes you'll get really cool techniques or effects that you wouldn't have gotten when it was a healthy brush. So I'm going to brighten that up. And just for transparency, I just realized, I don't think I mentioned this. I am sponsored by Frederick's. They were already the only canvas I used, but I know I talked about using that canvas earlier. I'm supposed to tell you guys I am sponsored, just for legal reasons, so I don't mislead anybody. But if you look back at my videos, they were already what I used before I was sponsored, so it doesn't really make a difference in my choice, but you guys, I do want to make sure you guys know that. I'm still moving this brush. I mean, I'm going to put more details, but I'm going to go ahead and start moving this. I'm going to switch brushes now. Back to that flat that I was using. And this is the unbleached titanium white. So it's not super bright. And you can mix your own unbleached titanium white. I didn't buy this for years. I just mixed my own with like yellow ochre or white, a little bit of brown or a little bit of violet. Something to tone it down just so that you get an off-white color. Lots of different ways you can mix pretty much the same thing. Now, I finally realized it was a color that I used so often, it was more practical for me just to go ahead and buy it. Okay, this line here, I need that to draw. I've got to redraw. I don't even know what I originally was looking at when I drew. Some of these lines in here are just an absolute mess. So just lightly going over that, lighten that up a bit. I think this should be about dry. So one color that I use of the Liquitex Heavy Body that just isn't available, or at least I've not seen it, I've not ever found one in the Liquitex Basics, is the transparent mixing white. Okay, and that one is this one, so that is the Liquitex Heavy Body. And this one is, if you want to do a glaze with white, this is the one to go with. This one's going to be a kind of cool white, cooler than the titanium white, but it's going to be more translucent. So for what I'm doing, that is a good thing. And I'm going to mix a little bit of blue. Even though my reference photo, which you can't see unless you go get it or see it at Wildlife Reference Photos, but the reference photo does not call for this much blue, but I'm still going to add it because I like how it looks. And if I don't like it, I can glaze over it, so it's no big deal. Okay, so I'm going to round this off. That's important. Make sure that it's round so that it looks three-dimensional. want this to be too bold. So I'm going to put a white highlight over it on part of it. This is just the really translucent part. Now I'm going to take, and with your acrylic brushes, make sure you're always, between using them, rinse them off and set them to the side to dry. Don't leave them sitting in the cup. You will damage them so fast. Never leave a brush sitting in the cup of water. What was I doing? Oh yeah, white. So now I'm actually, this is the time that I go to actual titanium white, where I want, this is going to be the whitest part of this. Well, the fireflies that I'll put in later will be pretty white. So it's not just a dot. I'm looking at my reference photo, and there's a bit of a shape here that I want to capture. Little dot there. Another little bit right there. We've got another highlight here. I also want to lighten up the underside of the eye. And then I'm going to smudge that out. Just a little bit, not too much, just so it's not too harsh. Now, I still have a lot of glazing I want to do on the color of the eye, but that does give me a nice, see the difference that that makes? Once you get that glaze, it does make it look much more three-dimensional. So I'm going to let that set for just a minute. And I think I'm going to come back and just start working on the highlights in here. We'll start working on the fur around the edge. Did I airbrush the background? I did, Andrew. It's not done yet, so I'll post it over on Instagram and Twitter and everywhere once the background is kind of a mess right now. It's at the very ugly stage. Let's see. Have I ever found mold growing in my paint? I've had it happen twice with paint I didn't use much. Both were yellow. That is interesting. I've never had it happen. I'm not sure what would cause it or what happens to make that cause. I've never seen anything like that myself. Max said, could you do a video comparative between Caran d'Ache watercolor and there? Yes, I'm actually planning that. Donna said, so back to my struggle with painting my dog's brown eyes. Whoops, that scrolled too far. What would you do to correct the color if you've gone too dark altogether with the brown and black? Highlight. You can add the transparent mixing white and lighten it back up. I mean, just keep layering until it gets to where you want, but add the highlights, let it dry, and then glaze color back over it. So you can make it like, so that it's too light. You could even make like a light gray. Lighten it up and just kind of paint right over it. Just a reminder, make sure, if I'm not answering your questions, it's probably because you didn't use the @Lachri fine art. If it doesn't highlight in orange, I just don't see your question. It's not that I'm trying to be rude and ignore you guys. Okay, let's see. Let's start pulling a little bit. Get a little bit of water. Thin that. I'm going to just do a little bit of a glaze here on the eye, and I'm going to pull that out. Just smudge it a bit. But adding these little extra details, these little bits of color, some dots, that is really going to help adding that detail. It'll make that eye look so, like it has so much more depth than just being a solid yellow. We don't want it to be totally flat. So with liner brushes, another tip I have for you, when I rinse these, I don't rub a liner brush at the bottom of the cup or at the bottom of, like if I've got a metal rack or something right there. I don't do that with a liner brush. With a liner brush, I just knock it like this back and forth. I hold it with 2 fingers, use another finger to smack it against the side of whatever my water well is, whether in this case that cup or a mason jar or whatever you're using as a water well. That's what I do to clean it out, and that way I'm not damaging the bristles. If you rub the bristles at the bottom of a cup or anything like that, it will damage over time. I mean, it's not super severe, and normally it doesn't really matter that much. It's on the liners that I worry about. So just by smacking it back and forth against the side of the jar, that will make a big difference in keeping it to keep its shape a lot better. Vladimir said, quick tip when using watercolor, use round brushes. They can hold a lot of water and have a pointy tip for detail. True. Monica said, have any of your Liquitex Basics paints become strange, chunky type texture? One of my paints did that. I'm not sure why. If I can still paint with it. Yes, absolutely. This one right now is starting to get chunky. Browns and some of the blues seem to be like the biggest culprits for me of having that happen. And it's usually something that I've had for a really long time. But I've bought some brand new and they must have been on the shelf too long and I've had that happen too. And once I thin it, you can see I'm still using it anyway. I just thin it with water until it's a good consistency or texture again, and I keep using it. It's never been a long-term problem. I don't know why that happens. It's kind of annoying because you do have to thin it out with the water to make it work, or a mixing medium, but it does. Once you mix it and kind of stir it in, it works fine. I still use all of mine. Never had a problem. But yes, it does happen. Usually, the cobalt blue, I've had it happen a lot of times, and then my raw umber, I've had it happen to. A lot of, actually almost, I think probably all the browns I've had it happen to. Maybe because I don't use brown that often. It may not be an issue of the brown. It may just be an issue of it's not a color I use that often. So, I mean, I tend to go through like phthalo blue and phthalo green the most because that's how I mix teal or white and black. I go through the most. So those never do it for me. So it may just be an issue of how long that paint's been in the tube. If it starts to kind of dry a little bit. Okay. So do I have my white charcoal pencil over here? I don't know if I do or not. I need to start sketching some of this in. I don't know where that pencil went though. I need a larger easel. That's like on one of my things. I really want to buy a bigger easel that has a nice shelf under it, like a bigger shelf than this one. So I can find, ooh, I found one. Ooh, it's an old one, but I think it'll work. I've got so much crap under that easel that should not be there right now. Okay, so let's see if I can kind of figure out where these stripes are supposed to be. So you came out to here, you lined up here, and came in, faded out. Here is that stripe. Okay, see, I'm not doing that. See, I can just kind of rub that out. It makes it really easy. You're close, but not that close. And then, where do I have another stripe? I think one there. Let's paint those in and see if it's right. Sarah said, when I hear people ask you to make certain tutorials, if it has something to do with something I do, like painting dogs, for example, I think maybe this is something I can do. You should make those tutorials. How long do you generally spend on your drawings, paintings? That's from Dawn. It depends on what it is. It might be 8 hours. It might be 40 hours. It really depends. Usually it's not 40 hours. I think the most normally I go to before I just lose interest is about 20 hours. And it's not like 20 hours all in a row, although I have done that. It's usually like broken up. I've done 40 hours, but I don't typically do that. I've gotten faster since back when I had done the 40-hour one. But yeah, it's usually, I'd say somewhere between 8, well, maybe 4. I'll go 4 to 20 hours, depending on what it is. Yeah, Monica, the chunky paint, a lot of artists have it with the Liquitex Basics. It's just, I don't know why. I'm guessing it just starts to dry in the tube. I also wonder if sometimes, because I've had some where they didn't seal properly, like in the back, and I wonder if air was just a little teeny bit had been leaking in. Not enough that anyone would see it or see that it was leaking, but I've always wondered, like, is that because the ones that you get that are brand new that have that. Now, if you ever get a brand new paint, like if I went to Michael's or something and I bought a brand new one, got home and found that, I'd probably go exchange it for one that did not have that. I would prefer it not to have those chunks, but I'm also not going to throw away paint that does, like my own paint that does, I'll just deal with it. But if I bought a brand new one and it was like that to me, I'm guessing, and again, I've not talked to the company, I have no idea with this, I'm guessing it's starting to dry, so it probably wouldn't last as long. So in that case, I would return it one if I just bought one that was like that. But I've heard other artists say they had it happen too, so I know it's not just us. Max said, can I use watercolor or Inktense as an underpainting for polychromos colored pencils? As acrylics are used. Yes, you absolutely can. You just want to keep in mind when you do an underpainting with colored pencil, it's hard to get your lights bright enough. It's easier to darken something up. But let's say you did a great underpainting and you needed a lot of white highlights. That's going to be hard to do because you don't have the white of the paper anymore. So just keep that in mind. But absolutely, colored pencil goes beautifully on top of Inktense and watercolor. It's just watch that with your colors. You know, you kind of have to prepare for that or be ready. Like pay attention to what colors you're putting where, knowing colored pencil is going to go in some of those areas. Oh, why is my battery dying? Hold on. That should have been plugged in. I'm glad it warned me before it just turned off. Oh, that's not plugged in. That makes sense. Okay. That should solve the problem. Let's see. Tammy said, I'm hoping to upgrade my easel to a wall easel. Harder for my studio assistant to knock over when chasing light or mobs, plus it'll allow me to work on larger pieces. That would be cool. I want basically just a bigger version of mine, but I've seen some that have like the big cups that are attached to the side. I'm like, I could put colored pencils in there while I'm working. Like, I really want that one, but I'm going to be saving for a while because it's not a cheap one. Alexandra said, hi, this is my first time joining chat. I just this minute found out how to. It's 3:25 a.m. here in Scotland, but I woke especially to tune in. Well, welcome, Alexandra. Kitty Cat said, oh, and I just scrolled too far. Wait, no, I didn't. There it is. Kitty Cat said, have you used the Inktense grater thing? I have not. I need to get one. I keep forgetting to ask Derwent, because I know they'll send me one since, you know, they know, Derwent's really cool because they know, like, with YouTubers, if you're making videos with their product, they'll just get, like, they're really good about giving me stuff to review. I've actually got stuff here, like tinted charcoal that I've not reviewed yet because charcoal, but I kind of want to try it anyway. So they've given me a lot of stuff I still need to review, find out if I like it or not. And I like with them too because they're not like, only review it if it's positive. Like if I don't like it, they don't care if I tell you guys I don't like something. I am like perfectly free to be honest about that, which is pretty cool. Sarah Makes Art said, I got a tube of ultramarine blue in Liquitex Basics from Blick once and it had the paint look 10 years old. Yeah, ultramarine blue, I've seen it with that one too. See, that makes me wonder, like, are we all having the same colors do that? Is it certain colors that are prone, or is it that those were just older? I don't, like, it's interesting that you're having the same color that I had have that too. I think I've had one red, but mostly those are usually fine. Like, it's, I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to start blocking in more of his blue-black stripes. I'm mixing water again, just thinning that out. Anytime you see me doing this where I'm mixing paint, I am never just start mixing paint on the brush. I always get water on my brush first to thin it out so that it's a consistency that I want to work with. And I stress that I want to work with because what I want that consistency to be may not be what works best for you, but it does for me. I'm just going to kind of dab. This one's really light. So the background color that I did, I mixed that with my black and violet. I used other colors. I think it was mostly black and violet. Oh, black, violet, and some brown. And it's working really well as a base layer underneath this. I mean, I'm going to have to brighten up. This is not the right color orange at all. But it's working just really nicely because I can go darker or lighter from here. Now, my stripes do not have to be perfect. However, if I were doing a pet portrait for somebody, then they have to be perfect. They have to be in the exact right spot. But I mean, this is nobody owns this tiger. Well, I don't know if it, maybe somebody took the photo at a zoo. I have no idea. But it's not somebody's pet where somebody's going to be like really picky if the stripes are exact. So I don't have to stress and make them perfect there. But if it were a pet portrait, like a commission, then they have to be exact. Okay, this gives me a pretty good idea of where everything goes. And now I can start working on finer details. Actually, I'm going to pull that bluish color down a little bit more. Let's see. Alexandra said, can an underpainting be used and colored pencil work to add colored ground to speed up the complexion of the artwork? It can. You just have to pay attention to where your lights and darks go. Because, like, let's say I was going to do something with watercolor pencils. I've got plenty of pencils that are going to be super opaque, and I can lighten things up if I've got an underpainting and something was too dark. So it's not a problem. But if I did that with colored pencils, that can be a challenge. Now, if you're using like the touch-up texture titanium white mixture I use for highlight, then you're kind of safe because you can always lighten something up and then put color on top of it if something was too dark. That would be a good solution for that. But you do have to watch, just because if you tone it too much, so many of those colored pencils, especially like an oil-based pencil, the polychromos are really bad with, I say really bad, but it's not a negative when you're working on white paper. But if I was working on top of a dark paper, that dark is really going to show through those polychromos. But even the wax-based pencils are going to be translucent to an extent, so some of those colors may end up showing through the colors where you don't want them to be. So you have to just be aware of that. But it'd be something that I do recommend trying out, because you can get really cool effects that way. You just have to be aware of that those paints or those colored pencils are not super opaque, so you're still going to see some of that on top. Let's see. Brent Blair said, is the charcoal Derwent sent you their extra large line? It was. So make sure, if so, make them send you their sleeves for them. They're great. I'll have to look at that. Blake said, I got my Luminance white and I'm using it for the first time right now. My wife thinks I need to quit watching tutorials, so I quit ordering stuff. That's funny. Vladimir said, do you know why my Icen acrylic painting set tacky and almost, you are missing spaces left and right here. This is hard to read, so I apologize because I'm not saying this right. Do you know why my eyes in acrylic paintings get tacky and almost appear to have very small bumps? I use Grumbacher Academy, and it's like the consistency of Liquitex Basics. Am I layering too thick? Yeah, it sounds like you're layering too thick. Thin it a little bit more with water, and you shouldn't have that happen. Josephine said, have you ever applied a final fixative and then decided to continue working on a colored pencil piece? If so, did you respray the texture fixative? No, I've never done that. Like, I don't spray the final fixative until I know I'm done. So I've not done that myself, but I would contact, if you're using like the brush and pencil final fixative, contact Aliona Nicholson over at brushandpencil.com, because she's going to be able to give you information there. Kitty Cat said I should get my viewers to submit their photos for me to draw. That could be fun, but that could also be a lot of work. A lot of work to collect. It's so much easier to have a set of photos that I already want to paint or draw and just choose from one of those. I'm lazy. Okay, let's come back through again with that blue, where some of these stripes go. Yeah, I think, was it Heather Rooney used to do that, like where she'd draw her viewers on like Sundays or something like that. I forget what it was. I remember seeing that. It was really cool. I also remember seeing that and going, I am just too lazy for that. Or busy. You can look at it however you want. Okay. So I'm going to start pulling out these colors a lot more around his eye here. The other thing, Vladimir, you might be getting chunks from is if your paint, like here, it's starting to dry, like you can tell it's not coming up. If I mix that and it gets in with the wet paint, sometimes those chunks will end up on my painting. So that could be your problem with the chunks too. So like when that starts to dry, on this palette, I'm just gonna take, where is it? I had it earlier. It's yellow. I don't know how I keep losing this. I almost got the black one and realized, oh no, I'll just lose that constantly. So I got the yellow one and I still lose it. Where is it? I have a tool somewhere, that I lost. Oh, here it is. What I'm going to do, just scrape that. And then if it's really starting to dry, if I missed a little bit of water, that will make it lift better. But if it does start to dry, that is a problem where those little dry chunks will mix in with the wet chunks, and then that can end up on your painting. So it might be that that's doing it. What type of brush do I use for the fur of the tiger? Whatever. Honestly, it's what I grab. Sometimes I'll switch back and forth between the like a rake brush, but you don't want to overdo rake brushes because it can look too uniform and start looking really fake. But I'll use those a little bit, but I didn't grab one, so I'm not using that tonight. So the main two brushes I've been using are a flat Taklon and a filbert Taklon that's kind of frayed, so it almost works like a rake brush, and then a liner brush for smaller details. But right now, I'm actually just going to glaze the color. I'm not even going to worry about the brush strokes right now. I do want to get this glaze, so I'm thinning this out with water, add a little bit of violet too. So it's a richer kind of red-orange. And I'm just going to glaze right over that. And I'll still have to add highlights, but right now that color is just so peach. It is not even close. This is too dark, so I'll add highlights, but I want to start building up my contrast. Just gives me a little bit of a better idea of where to go. I'm going to get a little bit of this color in between the black and that unbleached titanium white. Now these guys, it starts with an S and I can't think of the name, but these tigers tend to have a little bit more of a rich color. Like they don't have as much poofy white fur that a lot of the other tigers I typically draw are, and all the names just left me. Kitty Cat said, I can imagine you explaining how to draw my cat's face like it's nothing, and I just be here like, how? Hi, Nina. Okay, so actually, I'm trying to think which brush I want to start building these highlights and shadows and such. I'm going to use my liner, and I'm going to mix a black and violet color together. See, like this patch right here is dry, and it starts to chunk up as I get water on it. So like that chunk of paint, I don't know if you can see that. That could get on my canvas, so I want to work on a fresh spot where that the chunky paint isn't. Too violet, add more black. Let's try that. And then the other thing that you're not seeing is I typically take the brush when I've mixed the water and the paint. I dab it on a paper towel that is under my easel because it's almost always going to be too much for the painting itself. So I'm going to start pulling in some of the shadows, and then I'll come back through with highlights. But I'll end up going back and forth with highlights and shadows. Actually, this color would be perfect for right in here. That's that violet mixed with black. Yep, that was perfect. I like it. Siberian tiger. Thank you, Donna. I'm glad you pay attention. I'm really bad with names of things or people. Like my neighbor, this lady who's really nice, her name is Christy. It's the same name as my sister, and I still couldn't remember it for months. Like I'm so, like, I don't know why my brain's just like, nope, we're not retaining that information. It's cute that you tried, though. A little bit of a shadow there. Smudge that in. But I've got to get some of these areas a bit darker. If I don't, when I come through with the highlights won't show up. You want variation too. Like even when I'm doing here, some of these brush strokes I want to push a little bit harder and some a little bit lighter. Otherwise, it's going to be too uniform. If things are too uniform, they look stiff and like plastic toys, which I'm kind of at that stage right now. Okay, so I'm going to rinse that. I'm going to switch over to the unbleached titanium white. I'm just going to use that straight with water. Just twist that into the brush. Yeah, this is starting to get that film a little bit. I just mix it with water, and so I'm still able to use that paint. Anna said, when you were starting out as an artist, how did you determine when it was time to quit reworking a canvas and just start over? When I got bored, when I was just like, I'm bored, I don't want to paint anymore. Sometimes that was the time for me. The big thing though is as long as I know my drawing is solid, if the drawing is accurate, I can work with it. If I started, there were a few times where it's like, I know this drawing's not accurate. It's not going to get better if I keep painting unless I completely change. And so the outline, or, you know, start from scratch basically on the same thing. So those were times where I realized, yeah, I need to start over and do a better job. Like take more time getting my foundation drawing accurate. But most of the time, I just finish stuff. I tend to be one of those people who was like, I mean, I recognize it wasn't perfect or exactly what I wanted, but I was also so proud that I painted something that I didn't care. Like, I was just like, yay, it's amazing, even though I know it's not really right, but I'm still excited about it. So it wasn't super discouraging to me. Like, I kept going, there's a bug flying around on my canvas. Where did you come from? So I've got to really watch the direction that this moves, and then I'll overlap that over the black a little. You want to watch how long or how short your brush strokes are. Too long and he looks way too floofy. Too short and stiff, and that doesn't look right either. This fur is shorter, so I'm just going to do some little globs and dots. And then it gets a little longer out here. I've got to make sure they overlap and cross a bit. This is going to be too light for out here, but that's okay. I can glaze over it later, but I can start building up the texture and the direction that this fur moves. Vladimir said, how do you keep consistency in your work? How do you know when you're getting lazy in a piece, and do you know when to come back from that and go back where you know you're doing your best work? Yes, Nick, that floofy, it is a technical term. How do I know? I think when I don't know, do you ever get that feeling when I actually get this feeling more when I'm editing video. If I try to edit too many videos in a day, I start getting this where like my back, like you can feel the cringe just crawling up, like, oh, if I spend one more minute editing today and having to listen to my voice screw up wording things, I'm going to snap. That's the feeling I know where it's like time to walk away, time to take a break. And occasionally, I don't do it too often with painting, but there are times where I am rushing things. I don't usually get the cringe as much as when I'm editing, but I do have times where I definitely know I'm pushing things too fast and it's not looking how I want. I think that's the thing when I can't, like I start getting a little frustrated, like I know it's not what I want, but I also know I know how to do this, so it's time to step away. Let's see. Sietse said, what do you think is the best way to start a realistic acrylic painting? The background. I usually do my back, like a base layer, and just start with whatever is furthest back, and I work my way forward. That works for me. That's how I do it. Fine Art Ann said, me and a few other artists have started to draw creatures that are a combination of 2 or more animals. It would be fun to see some creature from you too. What animals would you mash together? Ooh, that does sound fun. Do you think I could mix a flamingo and an octopus? That would be weird. That'd be terrifying, actually. I like this idea. That sounds like a lot of fun. I may do that. At least in my sketchbook, if nothing else. I think that would be like a fun to just fill a sketchbook of combination characters. I want to do. I'm kind of excited. That like suddenly made sketchbooks sound way more fun to me. So I'm going to come over here to the black. I'm going to start working on some of the black areas. Again, just watch the direction. I don't need every brush stroke to be the exact same as my reference photo, but I do want to make sure that the hair is going in the right direction, right, you know, about the right length, my lights and darks, that those are in about the right place. That matters more than anything else. I don't need to sit and count 15 hairs going this direction, 14 this direction. That's not a big deal. Whoops. Sarah Makes Art said, on the topic of YouTube, I've heard some people practically insist that daily uploads are the way to go. But for me, I've never found that increasing the frequency that I upload make my channel grow faster. It sort of did for me, but then it stopped because YouTube changed their algorithm, and then it changed to where every time you upload, you lose a bunch of subscribers. Now, in part, that's going to happen organically because sometimes people will be subscribed to you and then you upload something and they forget they were subscribed to you and they're like, you uploading reminds them and they're like, oh, I don't really paint anymore. This channel's not super interesting to me, or, you know, whatever. So you'll get unsubscribes from that. But YouTube did something that they still are, I think at this point we can call it a feature because it seems like they're just going to leave it that way. But when you upload, you lose a certain amount too. So it was a weird balance of that we found. Like I remember one artist stopped uploading altogether and his channel started growing way faster, like way faster. And others would continue uploading daily and it was slower. And then now he's back to uploading more often and it's not growing as fast now. So it's a really weird thing. I don't know that you have to, but then at the same time, I mean, the more videos you have for people to find, if it's something that they are interested in, then that's going to be helpful too. It's kind of a weird balance between the two. Then I said, what program do you use when editing? I am currently using PowerDirector 16, but I'm kind of tempted to try the Adobe one because they have that big bundle. So I need a good editor for recording music anyway for a project I've got coming up. So that would be good, and I may as well just get the bundle and start trying their video editor to see if I like that too. Brooks Artwork said, do you think that it's valuable to learn bone and muscular structure of animals like Aaron Blaze? Seems to be useful to work out any errors in the drawing, even if not animated. Absolutely. The more you know, the better it is. Yeah, I definitely could see that being useful. For me, though, while I know it would be useful, it also doesn't hold my interest enough for me to do. So I'm not going to for that aspect, but it's like hands down super useful. Same for human anatomy, animal anatomy. The more you know about a subject, the better you're going to be at painting it. So yeah, definitely. Jenny Locke said, gerbera, giraffe, and zebra, they make interchangeable, aren't they? Yeah, you know, being that I keep mixing the two, I should combine those two. Fine Art Ann said, I just combined a whale and an octopus. Named him Whale-octopus. It was a quick Photoshop sketch and so fun to do. I'm glad I'm not the only one who jumps to, obviously an octopus has to be involved in this. How fun. Jasmine said, your artwork is amazing. Thank you. But when you started painting, how did you get yourself to finish a painting? I have a few I've not finished. I didn't allow myself to start something new until I finished something. If I start too many things, I stop finishing things. So, and if I get an idea for something I really want to paint, I've got to hurry up and finish this one first. Donna said, I know this is off topic, but I just signed up for Patreon. I'm looking for a way to search her page, but I can't seem to locate it. Am I missing something? Go to my website, go to lachri.com, and on the front thing under Patreon, there's a list of my Patreon videos. That's the easiest way to find what you're looking for. Patreon's search function is pretty useless. I mean, I know how to use their website. I've been using it for years, and if I can't find stuff, you guys are definitely going to have a hard time. So I made my own video library. It's linked on the very front of my website. I need to change my Patreon welcome to let everybody know that. I need to start sharing that more often. But if you just go to, it's right on the front page of my website, the Patreon video library, where you can see all of the videos, and just click on that. You will have to be logged into Patreon in order for those links to work. But that's the best way that you can find stuff. Sarah Makes Art said, it seems like months when I focus mainly on painting and drawing demonstrations, my channel experiences good growth for me. Maybe 14 to 16 subs versus 4 to 8. Yeah, keep doing that then. I just went too far. Hold on. Alexandra Stewart says, watching you work with acrylics and getting so much detail has inspired me to buy a full set of 36 Liquitex Basics to give it a go. Thank you. Scary phase is so scary. Wish me luck. Yeah, the scary phase is definitely scary. And when you're going to have layers that just look terrible, doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You're just not done yet. Keep layering until it looks good. Just keep layering. You can do so much with them. And break it down into small sections. The other thing I don't recommend when you first get started with acrylics, don't go, like this is a 24 by 36 inch canvas. Don't start that big. Like 16 by 20 inches is about as big as I would recommend someone start with. 18 by 24, maybe I would save that for a couple paintings in. Like an 11 by 14 is kind of perfect. Something a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to handle, not so intimidating, versus something that's super big. The bigger you go, yeah, you're able to get more detail, but I think it's a little bit too intimidating when you're first starting. So I would save the bigger canvases for when you've been doing, you've gotten a few more done. Brent said, there was a cheesy sci-fi movie called Sharktopus a while back, if you need a reference photo. Sci-fi, see, the Sci-Fi Channel is one thing I kind of miss about not having TV, because they had some pretty fun cheesy movies that were just like so ridiculously terrible, but that they were hilarious. Yeah, those, I always liked those. Okay, so I'm going to just start using unbleached titanium white, and I'm going to start going over this. Now, this is going to lighten this area too much. I'm going to glaze over it when it's done, because it's not really the right color anyway. But I can start putting in, let's see, this comes up a little further. I've got to overlap them. Don't get it too uniform. And then if it starts to be too stiff, stick your finger in it. It'll soften it a bit, and then when you glaze it, it'll soften it even more. But that works really well. If you are oil painting, keep your fingers out of your paint. Some of them are not toxic, or are toxic. If you're oil painting and you need to smudge something a bit, you can take either a mop brush and just lightly go over it, or just another brush and use that to smudge. But with acrylics, I can be pretty lazy and just use my fingers because they are non-toxic. Now here's a tip. If you're painting and you get paint in your clothes, always test on a small spot anyway. But then again, if you've got paint on your clothes, it doesn't really matter. It's already, you know, ruined, I guess. Vodka or like any strong alcohol, vodka is good because it's clear. But that will get paint out, like dry acrylic paint out of clothes. Clearing says, well, I have two Snoop's high schoolers attached to my shoulder and they would like to know how you know what to trace from a photo. Whatever is convenient for you. Experience. And I know that's not the answer anybody ever wants. They want like a definite, this is what you need. No, you figure out what's useful to you. What's useful to me, not necessarily going to be what's useful to you. You may want more lines. You may want less lines. Every artist is going to be a little bit different on what they find to be helpful, because it can hit a point where too many lines and you start to lose your place. If you don't have enough lines, that may be a challenge for you. So you have to, the more you paint, the more you draw, the more you're going to learn what is useful to you. But it's not going to be the same from one artist to the next. So this brush is actually getting to be a little bit small for some of the hairs that I'm doing. It's like, it's too small. So I've got to start pushing a little bit harder to thicken up some of these lines. I'm going to let some of these overlap into the black. Again, this is not the right color. That's okay. I'll glaze the right color over it. And this color that I had wasn't right either, so it didn't matter. I was going to have to adjust colors regardless. But really watch the direction of the fur, because it's so, I mean, it changes from here to there. Those, I mean, just a small thing and it starts to change direction. So you really want to watch that on your reference photo. And when you first start painting and drawing, that's going to feel weird. You're going to be like, I don't know what you're, like, how did you notice that? How do you even see what you're doing? Experience. The more you paint and draw, the more you're going to start noticing these things. There's no magic trick other than experience. Paint and draw more and you'll start to notice more. And remember, when you're drawing fur, think in terms of clumps and clusters, not necessarily individual brush strokes. So here I've got more individual strokes, but when I start moving my way out, there'll be more clumps and clusters of fur where they're kind of grouping together. Fine Art Ann said, could you give us quickly the pros and cons of that Derwent Lightfast pencil? I understand you love them, but are there any negatives in those things? Yeah, and actually, you know what? We're all wrapping this up, so I'm just going to go ahead and put my brushes to the side so we can talk about that a bit. The Lightfast pencils, they are a softer lead than like polychromos. I was expecting them to be just like polychromos. I thought we were just getting another oil-based pencil, and I kind of was not thrilled about that, because why? We've already got those. They've got 120 colors. all but 2 I consider light fast. Yeah, the light fast pencils by Derwent are more light fast, but the polychromos, I'm comfortable with the light fast ratings on those besides 2 that I pulled for my set. So I was kind of like, I'm not sure about this. I don't know why would somebody buy these, and they're expensive. Okay, I get it now. So they are different. They're definitely different than the polychromos. They are a softer, they're a little bit softer. The negative in any time you've got a softer lead, they break more often. Now, they're not breaking because they're defective. Like you guys hear me complain about Prismacolor. Prismacolor are going to break just because it's the nature of a soft lead. My complaint with Prismacolor is that they're not centered. They're going to you're taking a product that's going to be prone to breakage and you're not having a consistently centered lead. You're like making it even worse, that problem. You have to have a really nicely centered lead so that when you sharpen it, you don't get pressure points hitting weird so that it starts snapping that lead inside. Now, these are also soft, but they are centered. They're not snapping because of that. So I found that when I sharpen them, like, let's see if any of these over here are super sharp. Like when I sharpen them to a point like this, these are just polychromos, but that point, that was enough that if I was adding a lot of pressure, the whole tip of the lead would break off. Now, it wasn't breaking all the way inside like I've had happen with Prismacolor, but they were, they did better if they were only like short sharpened. You can pointier, but like the shorter type, a more extreme angle there. That seemed to do better for me. I had to watch the amount of pressure I was adding when it was sharp. They sharpen to a super fine point, but you've got to keep a really light hand because that tip, it's kind of crumbly because they are a softer lead. They feel to me more somewhere between like, I consider like polychromos that oil, and then you've got like Prismacolor or Luminance the wax. It seems somewhere in the middle. It is wonderful to work with. Like, so the breakage would be a negative, but not really, because that's the nature of a softer lead, and I'm really happy to have a pencil that is a softer lead, so it's not just another polychromos. I wouldn't like... I will be using this in combination with polychromos and with Caran d'Ache. To me, it's one more amazing pencil with that. The next negative I have, there are 36 colors. Now, they're going to have more colors, but they're not out yet. And the colors in the set, like this wouldn't be a set where somebody was like, I'm going to buy my first set. What should I buy? I wouldn't recommend this one yet because there's not enough, like there isn't a true red. There's an orangey red, but there's not a true red. There's no like middle range blue. You've got an ultramarine light blue and you've got amazing purples. Oh my gosh, those purples are amazing. But you're missing a lot of colors there. So if it was somebody getting their very first set of colored pencils, I wouldn't just go with this because not having the red and the blue, that's kind of a big deal because you can mix a lot as long as you've got those, and they're not in this set yet. They will be, they're just not there yet. I don't need to record this right now. So that I would consider to be a negative for now, but it's not a permanent negative because next year, lots of more colors are supposed to come out, and I've seen photos of some of these colors and I'm so excited. But for now, that I would put that in the negative range. They looks like they're pretty expensive. I think they were $114 on Amazon when I looked for the 36 set. That's a lot for 36 pencils, but they're the most light fast pencils out there. They're all ranked in #1. Now, I'm okay with a 1 or a 2 when it comes to the ASTM. My gosh, I'm tired. I have not had coffee. It's waiting for me in the fridge. I was chilling it. I'm having it after the live stream. But you care. I know. But those ones, I'm okay with a 1 or 2, a 2. Derwent decided they're going to be the most light fast and only releasing ones. So those, I mean, that's a pro. That also means they're going to cost more because they're more light fast. So that does make sense to me. But they are on the high end, which I'm willing to pay for a pencil of this quality. I love them. But I just cannot wait for more colors to come out. 36 is just not enough for me. I want more. They're really good. So like I said, I'm excited that they're making more. They're just not there yet. What are the 2 colors in polychromos that aren't light fast? I don't know off the top of my head. They were like purplish violet type colors. They've got a star marking. They'll tell you. So light fast colored pencils on sanded paper. I've not tried them yet. They should work. I know the Pro Color worked fine on sanded paper, so I think that they'll work, but I need to test that before I do my full review video, because I need to make that. I haven't filmed it yet. Let's see. Rick's artwork said, wondering pros and cons of mixing colors with a palette knife versus a brush. Seems like there are 2 schools of thought, or is it just a matter of what... I think it's what works best for the artist. So mixing with a palette knife, you're not going to ruin your brushes. It's easy to wipe off. That's the biggest pro to mixing with the palette knife. The downside, because you just, can wipe that off. The downside is you have a tendency, especially a newer artist, an experienced artist is not going to have this problem, but a newer artist is going to struggle with mixing too much of the wrong color because they're just scooping and stirring, and it's hard for a new artist to get used to that, and so they end up wasting a ton of paint. And even the way I mix such small amounts, I prefer to just mix it with the brush. So those are kind of there are pros and cons to both methods, and each artist has to figure out which they prefer. I wouldn't judge someone negatively for choosing one or the other. Like, it's not a big deal. It doesn't affect the archival quality of the work. Like, I understand why someone would choose one or like either. So it makes sense. But for me, I prefer to mix with my brushes, and I think for newer students, it's easier to control how much paint you mix and that you don't end up stirring in, this massive pot of the wrong color, because that can be hard to control. Donna said, did you see the video from Derwent on how they make their pencils? I've seen some. I'm not sure if I've seen the same one you saw. Me too, the Papitu said, so I kind of got off of painting. It's been like 7 months. What should I do to get myself motivated to start painting again? And you should paint your birdie. I drew him in graphite. I haven't drawn the parrotlet yet, though. Spend some time on a good, like, you can go to Pixabay if you want free reference photos, or the other night, I spent like 2 hours at wildlifereferencephotos.com. I purchased 15 photos, so that ended up being, what, $30? I think I spent $30 for 15 photos, which is good. So, what, $2 a piece? But I got some amazing, amazing photos. That's where this photo comes from. I had already downloaded this one. I downloaded new ones. And I'm so excited to paint. And for me, that motivates me. When I get a photo that I'm like, I'm excited to do this. The other thing, go take photos on your own. See if you get a cool photo that may motivate you to want to paint. But that's what I did. That worked out really well for me. For like when I seeing some of those photos, I'm just so excited, and they give me ideas, because I don't usually paint them exactly as they are, like the same background. I'm going to change stuff, but I get excited looking at that, figuring out like, oh, I'm going to change this, I'm going to blur this out, I'm going to change this color. I'm going to do that. Excites me and gets me motivated to want to go paint. So that give that a try. Donna said, the video I saw on Amazon when you look under Derwent pencil. No, I've not seen that one. I'll have to check that out. Alexandra said, I priced the canvas you're using. It's super expensive in the UK, equivalent to over $80. Yeah, this is an expensive one. Is there a less expensive canvas or possibly a canvas paper you can recommend to be used? Frederick's, one of the things you can do is get a roll of canvas. Now, see, I know they sell them in the UK, but it may be expensive because they're an American company, so you may have better choices there. Honestly, ask Jason Morgan, because he's in Wales. So if you he's here on YouTube. If you ask him, I bet you he could give you some good suggestions for what he uses, like where he works on the canvas. I think he gets a roll and cuts out the sheet that he wants. So that may be a good option for you. But I would ask Jason. I bet he's got some good suggestions. What's a birdie? Is that like a chicken? Yeah, some people call chickens birds. I don't get it myself, but yes. It's funny. Okay, so it is 10:02. I am super tired, so we're going to wrap this up now. I want to thank again my moderators so much, Joseph and Valerie, for helping out tonight. I think even Nick was here. But thank you guys so much for helping out. I've got links to their channels in the video description, so make sure to check them out. They've got amazing work. Really, really cool stuff. And one last question from Gail Perkins. What brand of oil paints do I recommend? If you go to my website, Lachri.com, I have a supply list at the top for most of the supplies that I use. And I list out all the stuff that I currently use that I like. So it makes it really easy to find everything. But that is it for tonight. And yes, oh, I love that. Tommy asked, how do I get motivated to draw again? Joseph Fincham says, just do it. Wise words. Just get into it. Where to get the hog hair liner brushes? I get these ones from Hobby Lobby. They're my favorites. I think we're good. Okay. And yep, so thank you guys for joining. I don't know. Next week, I have a feeling I'll still be working on this painting next week. This is a pretty big project. So thank you again for joining, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.